Crothers, the President and Country Chair of Shell Canada. Well, in lots of ways, I think the first thing we're thinking about is, of course, care for people and care for our employees. So we've separated our company into the business critical folks that are in the front lines of our assets, stretching from our oil and gas production through to our chemical plants, refineries, upgraders, and into our distribution network at the terminals and right to the front line retail. So how do we keep those people safe? How do we make sure that they can practice social distancing as they do their work? And how can we serve our customers through this? So that leads into the second piece for us, which is business continuity. And how do we manage to keep those essential services we provide for Canadians going during this time? And also deal with what's been a huge destruction of demand in our business. We're an integrated player, so we have a lot of products that we sell, and obviously jet fuel is not in demand, and gasoline has dropped off dramatically in demand. So we're managing to balance our operations around that new reality while keeping people safe. And the third piece for us is cash conservation, which is a pretty common one for everybody in the sector. The drop in prices has been dramatic and unprecedented, and how do you cope with that? Retool your capital programs, look at your immediate costs. We're a company that takes a long-term view, so we're not jumping to laying off people. That's a last resort for us. We have to look at our supply chains. We have to look at other costs in our business and do everything we can in the near term to get those under control. I say for the upstream part of our sector, so where Shell has the benefit of being an integrated player, for the upstream players that are small and all they have is the upstream, it's just a terrible situation for them, and liquidity is the key concern. How can they get enough liquidity? How can they get enough credit to ride through this and maintain jobs and be there for a recovery? And so, that's the ultimate issue for the upstream part of the business that's a bit unique to them. We have, again, the benefit of the integrated business with other revenue streams. The oil players in the shales business are extremely exposed because they just don't have a cost structure that can manage it. The oil sands players, of which we used to be a big one. Now we're just a small part of that venture now, but they've got a big manufacturing base. They will be definitely suffering as well, but they have the scale and they have some of the integration on crude and on upgrading that will help them to cope. And then as I mentioned, you got the small players who are just so exposed to the collapse in cash flow and are just struggling to survive. So it's that whole gamut, and then at the far end are the integrateds. I think what's really needed is some more investment, some more opportunity to help those smaller companies bridge. And, it is an ecosystem. So I've been around the industry for a long time, and it's really an ecosystem that needs these small, nimble producers that are on the leading edge of innovation. It needs the larger scale companies that can bring the technology to bear, that can then support and build on those smaller companies' developments. And, we need a healthy ecosystem from end to end. And that's something that this current crisis is threatening. What I see is a huge amount of communication. So there's a real deliberate attempt to make sure there's connections happening on a weekly basis with all key levels of government. And that's deeply appreciated by the industry. I think you can see groups like the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, the Canadian Fuels Association, really trying to play a convening role and help government connect with industry in a really efficient way. Obviously you can't have, 200 companies calling up the government and trying to fulfill their own agenda. It's really helpful if there's aligned prioritization and then the associations engage. So that's what Shell's been trying to support with our key linkages. I have to say I'm really encouraged by the swift action by both the provincial and federal governments to deal with the crisis and get some relief out immediately to workers that have been displaced, to families, to a whole variety of sectors of the society that have had to cope with these dramatic surges in unemployment. I think for our sector, I'll come back to liquidity again and the need to help. I think with some of that, yes, the wage subsidies that have been offered across all Canadian society will be helpful. You've got a lot of other help that's coming for individuals, but for the sector, I think there's a couple of areas like liquidity, like orphan wells, for example, an opportunity. Again, this doesn't really apply to Shell because we've kept up with our backlog. We have very few wells to manage, but others have hundreds. And if you're a small company that has hundreds of wells to look after, combined with this liquidity crunch, very opportune for government to step in and give a hand to say, look, here's some funds, we can manage these liabilities, we can ensure that the environment's protected, and we can keep people working, which is a key thing, to have that, the mental health that goes along with the job, the dignity of a job, and doing really valuable work. So I think the opportunity is to think a bit longer term. Also infrastructure investment. So how can infrastructure investment support the sector and our long-term goals to continue to reduce emissions? We're very committed to energy transition and Shell. We are deeply investing in that area. But how can we create the right infrastructure opportunities? For example, upstream electrification, reducing methane emissions, and those types of endeavors, more innovation that help us to keep driving our emissions down and make Canadian oil and gas more sustainable. Shell's very focused on our part of managing the climate change challenge. We've made a huge commitment in terms of reducing our emission profile, but also investing billions of dollars actually in new energies, renewable fuels, renewable power, other technology that's going to help get us there, as well as cutting back our own emissions. So the heightened awareness on climate change for Shell is a good thing. At the same time, the energy transition is a decades-long challenge, and we need oil and gas in the near term. We need it in Canada, we need it globally. But what's important is that we keep driving down the net carbon footprint of that production as we go along. So I think coming out of this opportunity, as I said, is to continue to invest in innovation, which helps the sector be more responsible. But I think it's already highly responsible and accountable around climate change. It has a great track record of reducing emissions, and this is an opportunity to perhaps accelerate that. At the same time, for Shell and our portfolio, an opportune time to keep investing in clean energy infrastructure, helping to create the right conditions for more investment in biofuels, in renewable power, and hydrogen, and other areas that Shell's taken some dramatic steps into. But broadly, Canada can still play, and I think must play, a key role in global climate change, but it could do so by being the lowest carbon footprint hydrocarbons on the planet. And we know we have that for gas already, and we know that on the oil side that's continuing to improve for the big oil sands players. Thinking about how this might change the business fabric of the country, at the moment it's quite it could be overwhelming. But like any crisis, there will be opportunities for innovation and players that have a long-term view. And I think on that basis, you can see this nationalization of supply chains potential. You can see the area of healthcare, where Canada has been a leader. You can see that the strength of our public healthcare system in responding to a crisis like this. You can see the innovation that's happening daily. I saw this morning that there's a new COVID-19 test that was developed in Canada. And we have some fantastic capability to develop vaccines and be part of the global response to this challenge. Within other parts of the economy, I think the ways of working are certainly being challenged. And we've found in Shell, thanks to our great IT team, that we've been able to work very effectively from home. Now, I do think there's benefit in being face-to-face overall. There's collaboration that's informal, that creates creativity and creates overall value. But I think for some companies, it may be reflecting on, do we really need a bricks and mortar structure to do our business, or can we continue in this mode of connectivity? I think socially, we're all maybe better connected than we might have been. I find myself, connecting with friends I haven't talked to for quite a while. It's just helpful in that respect. It's sort of pushing you out to be a bit more outward looking and reflecting on your relationships. And I think that can only be a good thing. And what comes out of those relationships for business, I think, could be really interesting as we reflect on a different way of being together, a different way of engaging each other, and thinking about the innovation that catalyzes. How do we connect business in a different way and work together in a different way that we thought we had to, have complex meetings and fly around the world to do, but actually we can figure out how to do on Skype and Zoom and other collaboration tools. So I think that's the germ of this, is probably around collaboration and using it as a way to generate new business opportunities. One of the things I would reflect on is a notion of continuous learning. And rather than try to predict where we might be, I think it's a bit more about building a different muscle. And the muscle is going to be around continuous learning and adaptation. And actually, we've been fairly slow in Canada to do that. Some sectors have been great, others haven't been as good. I think in the oil and gas sector, we've been pretty good, but I think this could accelerate our need to innovate, our need for new business models that are even lower cost and have a different way of managing our business with higher connectivity and more nimble. But I think across Canadian business as a whole, there's likely a need to adapt faster, to evolve faster, to learn faster, to retrain our workforce potentially more quickly as well as technology advances, and as the dislocation that, again, we're yet to understand will play through. But to be able to adapt to it, to have that resilience in our economy, we're going to have to be able to move a lot more quickly than we have been. To see the level of unity, of working together, of nonpartisanship, just focus on care for each other has been remarkable and really encouraging. And I think, again, back to what I was saying earlier about this is the best of Canadians. When we're in a kind of situation where we need to help each other, we just do. It's innate. There's this real pulling together and coming together that builds so much resilience when people feel that support, and they feel it from government, they feel it from friends and family. But it's clear that people aren't trying to play games for personal or political gain or corporate gain. This is about all of us working together to do what we can as companies, as people, as communities, as governments, to do the right thing and get through it. And like I was saying earlier, if we can bottle some of that level of collaboration, then we can move much more quickly to make the kinds of changes that make Canada stronger, make Canada more sustainable, make Canada more renewable in the future. So it's a great opportunity not to kind of fall back into the old ways, if you will, after this is over, to build on the momentum of collaboration and be able to take Canada forward into what's going to be a very challenging next decade in managing the fallout from this crisis. I think the other thing that we see is a real intent to collaborate. How can we work together? And one example of that is Shell's donated 125,000 liters of isopropyl alcohol, which is the key ingredient for hand sanitizer, to the Canadian government, just to support its priorities to make sure that frontline health workers are getting the supplies that they need. We're delighted to do that. That comes out of our facility in Southern Ontario, near Sarnia. But many other companies are stepping up. And interestingly, what people may not realize is in Canada, we have supply chains in Shell that link to our other chemicals businesses, which include medical supplies and disinfectants and cleaners and detergents that also have become very important. And because they're connected to value chains that run through refineries to get the feedstock, it creates an interesting challenge to make sure you have enough load on those refineries to make sure those that have become much more essential products are also being produced. But there's really strong collaboration and open discussion to make sure that that happens. And I guess the last thing is a lot of community investment, which has been wonderful to watch. And I can come on to some of the examples from within Shell in a little bit, but everything from food banks to United Way to, we have a 3D printer at Scotford Refinery, which we've repurposed into making face shields for frontline medical staff. All kinds of great innovations. And, people stepping up, like I said, in the Canadian spirit, the Canadian way to help out each other. For me, it's been pretty easy. I'm not business critical, so we moved very early actually to get our staff that weren't business critical working from home. We did that in mid-March. I had quite a few others just to take the risk away from them from a safety standpoint. But what I'm always humbled by is the professionalism of our frontline people that are in the assets and having to go into work. If you're a retail frontline worker in a service station, if you're one of our operators or maintenance people on one of the assets, one of our distribution people, truck drivers, these people have done just amazing things, keeping each other safe and keeping those key supply chains going. So we try to make sure we're supporting them. And actually, when you're helping other people, it helps you feel good too. It helps you work through it. I have a fantastic team around me. We call it a crisis management team, and we have a good structure. And, the people that are managing all the myriad challenges have done an amazing job. So that's why I draw a lot of strength from and a lot of inspiration from is the way that they're doing their work. Personally, it's been a pretty easy adaptation. We have an office in front of the house, so I can go in there, close the door. I kind of try to make it like a journey. When I walk in the room, it's office time. I try to be disciplined about stopping work at the end of the day. Otherwise, I'd be on my laptop till all hours. But I try to stop before dinner, and then I change my clothes. It sounds weird, but I don't wear my suit to my home office, but I wear a dress shirt. Look a little bit. It feels a bit more formal. After I stop my work, it's the casual clothes go on. The jeans, the sweatpants, and it just helps me mentally switch off a little bit. And then I, spend some time with my wife. We have, our kids are all grown up and out of the house. But what's helping us stay connected is, of course, like everybody else, social media. We're Skyping and Zooming and, phoning and staying in contact. And, that's been fantastic. You can't, you miss them. You wish you could give the kids a hug and see them, but it's just not the right thing to do right now. Lots of walks around the neighborhood. Trying to get outside, trying to get exercise. I miss going to the gym like all of us do, but trying to adapt. So I started doing some yoga this past weekend. So I went on YouTube and figured out, starting to try it. I'm not very good at the moves, but I'm doing some beginner yoga and I find it good. It's challenging. It's therapeutic. It's stretching new muscles, and I think that's part of what we need to do in this is just be adaptable but you got to stay connected to people, and you have to try to keep up with your exercise because that's core to mental health. If you can do those couple of things, it'll really help to get through it. And so we're doing that, stay connected to our family and friends, and that's helping a lot. I'm Michael Crothers, and this is My Future Economy.